All right, here we go. Theoretically, of course. Double check monetization is on. Enter the control room. So, welcome everybody. Most likely, who's watching the recording afterwards. I doubt anybody was literally waiting to jump right in. But welcome to the annual what's going to happen next year in the things that we talk about stream. Get off my screen. Now, let's get everything up that we need. The only thing we should need off the top of my head is of course, the world map, and instead of using the glitchy Google Earth, we now use NOAA's bathymetry site, which is a world map that is specifically, those who are unfamiliar with it, aimed at displaying highly detailed visuals of the ocean floor and depth measurements and stuff. But it works as an Earth map as well, and one that, again, does not override and glitch out the stream in the same way that Google Earth does. And we'll get all necessary graphs up potentially. So for anyone who's not familiar also, you go under any of my videos from the last year or two, there'll be these links down here. Underneath the PayPal and Patreon ones, there's a free access drive link that will take you to this Google Drive folder with various subfolders full of all kinds of graphs that I maintain and update that are perpetually free to access, since all the official sites are constantly putting stuff behind paywalls now. I'm going to constantly maintain a non-paywall one for everybody else. And now that's live. I forgot to switch. Oh no, I did switch this to live. And so now we're going to give people a minute or two to show up, and I'll start I'll start with a few smaller things probably, and then go towards bigger ones, or at least metrics of bigger numbers, since a lot of the stuff is of similar categories. And I promised those in the house that I would try to keep this to only 1 hour, so that's what we're going to do. 2:12 p.m. Alaska time, where I used to live, where I wish I could live again, but that would require earning at least $700 or $800 a month, which I currently do not. But anyways, so 3:12 Alaska time is when I'm going to try to end things by. We already have Epic Pen up. Is it having the issue? Nope, it is working. So let me take a sip of water. Seal. There we go. And I don't think I'll need anyone else or anything else up yet. There we go. Chat's actually coming to life earlier than usual and being more alive than usual. And also, over here, random, random dumb stuff. Where is it? So apart from the one you guys already know about, the Patreon oil exporters map for anyone who's on different tiers of Patreon, or anyone who sends PayPal money or YouTube super chat money, that that gets you on the map as well, temporarily at least, since that's a one-time thing. And whatever that total is, just divide it by 12, so it equals out to a Patreon equivalent, and that gets you different tiers of oil exporter. But I also added another thing. Did I not put it in here? Oh yeah, there it is. I called it Map Zero. I haven't finished clearing out some of the smaller countries' province lines yet, but I came to a weird random realization, since the only like reward for patrons and Patreon and people sending super chat or PayPal money I can offer, since I have nothing, is getting is coloring in a map with your name. I came up with another variation of that because I realized that back up home, my minimum living expense threshold especially given how well run everything was back up home, and there's a lot of free stuff, including the public transit. Uh, was about 8 grand. With inflation, it's probably closer to 9 grand now, but for old time's sake, assume it's still 8 grand. And I realized there's a little over 8 billion people on the planet now. So per year, we can Patreon and ad revenue totals each month included. We can fill in the map at a rate of $1 equals 1 million people, and see if we can ever actually get back up to my old income. And however much is there by the end of each year is how many people in which countries get to survive the apocalypse, so to speak. All right, we are in long enough. How long would be on? 6 minutes is enough that if you're here, you're here. If you show up later, oh well, you can scroll back on the timeline. Okay, so oil and gas stuff first, as always, as expectable. Let's people probably going to want to know about the U.S. and or larger ones first. So we will, let's see, where do we want to go first? Random picks. Egypt and Iraq. Egypt will not get as close. Iraq will probably hit and exceed it. But in terms of 2026 oil demand developments and milestones being reached, technically Egypt is climbing back up after having their economic dive and then COVID on top of that. Whereas Iraq is kind of just growing, although they had the COVID drop as well, like everyone else did. And instead of a dive in the later 2010s, they kind of just went flat. But they're getting up there. So both of those two. Where did EpicPen go? EpicPen, get back here. Get back here. There we go. Clear. And now it should work. Yes. 1M per million. And a down arrow because Egypt will probably stay a bit under it, whereas Iraq is probably going to be exceeding it. So both Egypt and Iraq will roughly reach, and in Iraq's case, exceed milestone levels of 1 million barrels per day of domestic oil consumption for their own oil demand, which for Egypt is equivalent to about twice its oil production, as they've fallen down to only around 500,000 barrels per day. And for Iraq, that will be only about 20% of its domestic production. As next year for production, they are going to be getting to, unless there are terror attacks on the infrastructure projects or there's unexpected delays, they're going to be getting to and possibly right above, but for safety's sake, we'll say right up to a flat 5 million barrels per day. We're basically pulling up right next to Canada in terms of output. So that will only be 1/5. They'll only be consuming 1/5 of their output, whereas Egypt will be consuming 2 times their field's output. Both countries will be reaching demand levels, and in Iraq's case, exceeding it, of 1 million barrels per day of domestic consumption. And production-wise, Iraq will be jumping up to and exceeding 5 million barrels per day because of the pipeline extension thing, and also projects at several fields here or there that are preparations for further water injection of water from the Persian Gulf, not diverting water from the drying up Euphrates and Tigris rivers, but further injection to enhance output from those fields. And the combination of things should bring them up to about 5 million barrels per day from the production graphs. And for anyone just showing up who's never been here before, This is the Google Drive folder with all of the different subfolders and different graphs and stuff. Actually, this is the full outside version of it, but we're in the oil stuff right now. Look under any recent video I've made in the last 2 years or so, and you'll find a link to this. This is free to access at any time. But as I was saying, go down to Iraq. So Iraq's around 4.5 at the moment, and they're about to expand the amount that's allowed to pass through that one pipeline. So they're about to jump up to probably 4.6 or 4.7 in the next month or two. But they should be jumping up to 5 or reaching around Canada's output level. And we'll just jump around by proximity. So not a significant one, not a solid number, but as in not like 1 million or 2 million, but just a continuing trend line, predictable continued growth. Turkey will reach 1.4 million barrels per day of oil consumption versus their present just above 1.3. They, for the last like several months, those of you who follow the updates, they've been coming in around constantly like 1.31, 1.34, back down to 1.32. So they're making their way up there. And their record high, I think, was 1.37 back during the summer. What else do we have? Major stuff major stuff developments coming for Qatar, as Qatar technically sharing with Iran the Pars gas field under the seabed of the Persian Gulf, is the largest natural gas formation on the face of the earth, 1.2 quadrillion cubic feet when it was first discovered. Now, after producing for 3 decades or so, it's down to around 1.07 quadrillion cubic feet. So it has a long ways to go. And the amount that flows out of it is effectively just a metric of how many wells you put into it and how many tieback pipelines you have to the shore. And Qatar is working on a massive expansion, the first part of which comes online at the second half of next year in 2026, which is why it's one of the things on the list, where their graph will look like a stair step thing. They're currently around 21. They'll jump up to about 24. And then in further years, in 2027, they'll jump up to 27. And then in 2029 or 2030, they'll jump up to 30 billion cubic feet per day. But we go back out here, natural gas production, Qatar, where's Qatar? There it is. So you can see they've been here around 21 billion cubic feet for a while, and they're about to have a sudden upward jump late next year to 24 billion cubic feet per day. So that is another energy development that is going to happen, along with the UAE reaching their desired 4 million barrel per day production plateau of oil. Go back to the oil stuff, oil production, all the way down to UAE. So the UAE had previously been around 3, but they want to go up to 4 because their domestic consumption, their own demand, is now getting closer to 1.3 million barrels per day. So they want a wider export ratio, even though they will only be able to maintain a 4 million barrel per day plateau until probably the early 2040s or maybe 2040 itself. Whereas the 3 million barrel per day one, they would have been able to maintain until the later 2040s. But they've been increasing already. And actually, I don't think this is the. I did not. When did I last update this? Oh, Okay, I have to actually upload the more updated version. They're up to 3.47 right now. So during 2026, next year, they will get up to and then flatten themselves off at a plateau of 4 million barrels per day instead of their prior 3 million barrels per day. Energy and resource related in the surrounding area. Jumping over to India then, and jumping back over to oil demand graphs. So you can see they've come right up to the threshold already. So this one was hopefully one of the most obvious. India will be reaching, this represents the threshold, reaching and exceeding 6 million barrels per day of oil consumption, continuing to climb upwards and upwards. China, meanwhile, is going to stay plateaued around 17 or 18 for year four, unless they decide to do the Taiwan invasion next year, this coming year, in which case, then during the course of that, because of import and export cutoffs, internal panic, and economic implosion, their oil demand will crash by a few million barrels per day at the very least. Check chat, be responsible. I have always at least attempted to pronounce things correctly. Uh, sometimes what you assume is not actually correct. Like with I had always, because every other language than English actually pronounces vowels correctly or in a specific way, usually with enunciations. I always assumed uh, I always assumed that Ghana was pronounced Ghana, but apparently, after listening to the president of Ghana and Ghanaians actually speak, they say the name of their country uh, without that much of an ah, and they always say it very lowly enunciated, like not actually a lot of powerful emphasis on it. So it's not Ghana, it's usually Ghana or something of the sort. Blah 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 blah. I will get to the conflicts soon. Got 13 here. Random dip. See how many more we get as we go on. Let's see. Was there any other oil demand and or production stuff of significance that we know is coming? Vietnam will reach and exceed 800,000 barrels per day of domestic oil consumption. And Mexico, as they've been continuing their recovery economically post COVID, they might just just touch or come just under 2 million barrels per day of oil consumption again as their economic recovery continues and their renewed economic growth actually continues as well. Uh, different aspects, different aspects of the economy have been doing differently from each other. Like the global tourism industry as a whole, like globally, has been kind of thrown into a rearranged whack post COVID. But they might touch 2 million barrels per day again. And also, as their population is still growing for the moment, but they are going to stop a lot sooner than everyone initially thought they would. Also, by the end of this coming year, not the numbers that come out at the very start of the year, which are based on the totality of this year, the current year, but by the end of next year, they will likely reach 2 trillion in total GDP value. And the US will be in exceedance of 30 trillion. However, a significant portion of that growth is just inflated stock overvaluation because of the absurdity of the AI bubble, which will continue next year. It will continue at the very least its plateauing and might start its actual contraction as the what sorry, the words escape me. The tech giants that be have actually started finally, you may have seen them. They've started actually admitting in interviews and articles that they're not sure how they're supposed to profit off of AI. Like Google's AI chatbot response to whatever searches you make now that it brute forced in there. Some people find them nice and everything, but it, Google doesn't earn money from the chatbot giving you a response, and all the generative AI imagery and videos, all the deep fake porn or whatever, does not actually make money except for the circular money that they trade around to each other, because those sites primarily get their money through ads, and no one really wants to advertise on them except other porn sites, or in this case, AI generated porn sites. So they're advertising on each other and are just shuffling a shrinking amount of money back and forth between each other. I think even the big one that everyone's constantly behind, OpenAI, published like their year-end earnings stuff or whatever, and it came in as their costs were 50 to 60 billion, and their earnings were between 4 and 5 billion. So a 1000% loss ratio. This has never been a sustainable thing economically. It only happens when you get people with money aimlessly throwing their money in to pump something up, so that they can then, a lot of them probably know it's going to crash, so that they can then uh, pull out and bank on the inflated value and then leave everyone else to pick up a bunch of crumbled pieces, aka what modern what modern present day capitalism has turned into, which is the pump and dump method of earning money, as opposed to the produce and constantly supply meaningful products to society angle of making money. But the number of the tech giants like Microsoft finally, and I think Apple just did begrudgingly admit that they're not going to be putting as much AI and stuff for the foreseeable future, because they literally had to invent the term AI fatigue to describe their customer base's seething hatred for everything that they're doing. They needed a gentler term for it, so they invented the term AI fatigue. And in reality, it's not actually because we, the customers, seethingly hate it. It's because they finally realized that they're not actually earning any money out of doing this. They just got initiated into a cult, basically, a pump and dump stock inflation cult. But anyways, now that we're situated above the U.S., we'll do U.S. numbers. So for U.S. oil production in 2026, it will continue its rough plateau and start working its way downwards as I've said before, apart from the sudden jumps when a new field out in the Gulf or back up home in Alaska activates, the background US decline then that resumes from shale hitting the end of its viable life is between 10 and 15,000 barrels per day of loss per week. So, unabated, without any sudden production jumps from a big offshore fields starting up or big Arctic fields back up home starting up, it would work out to around 600,000 barrels per day of decline over the course of a year. And last year, US oil production did this, and right around the end, kind of jumped up with a big one like that. And so starting off like that, and there's not as much on the threshold this time. So this year, it's probably going to go a bit more net downwards. But all in all, in grand total, not a huge plunge yet. That is coming, but next year is not it. Unless, like, I don't know, an asteroid strikes the pipelines from the Permian or something, then you immediately have millions of barrels per day cut off. But that is going to continue. So it will still be meandering around like a lumbering arm or a horizontal wacky inflatable uh, arm flailing tube man in the mid 13s area for this coming year, with most likely a net down. And even the EIA, which has always been blindingly optimistic, you guys remember they would constantly publish stuff. I would mention it as I don't know how frequently I mentioned it, but they would constantly publish forecasts about how the U.S. was going to reach 15 million barrels per day, and then it was going to stay under their forecast at 15 million barrels per day all the way until 2050. You know, obscene Saudi Arabia levels of nonsense. So even the EIA finally admitted this time in their end of year forecast release that yeah, we'll probably see some decline next year, but not that much. Probably maybe less than 100,000 barrels per day. So even they are finally giving it up. At least the 15 million barrels per day for all of eternity nonsense fantasy thing. For U.S. natural gas production, it will continue for another year, wobbling around in the 110s range. Probably, I'd say 1 or 2 years was, I believe, what I said at the start of this year as well. 1 or 2 years before it then starts like genuinely curving down. So next year, it will continue fluctuating around in the 110s in terms of billion cubic feet per day. It's been all over the place for the last few years, as expected, anywhere between 112 and 118, with occasional spikes up to 120. The most recent of those was in, I think, late October or early November. Before that, and after that, it's been usually 118 or so. So that's going to continue. And the reduced incoming population to the US from people canceling their immigration plans under the current administration's outlook of things, that's going to continue. So it has dropped to, instead of 2 million incoming per year, down to about one or less than one. And that, or sorry, no, it's like 1.6 or 1.8, down to around 600 to 800,000, combined with the fact that net population growth in terms of births and deaths in the US is about to fall below 1 million. And combined, those now drop your average annual population growth from around 2.5 down to more around 1.5, which should, by the end of next year, put the US at around or just under a flat 345 from its current 343 points, either 2 or 3. So it'll get close to about 345 million or so. And jumping off from that, actually, we have a few other population number expectancies for next year of some significance. Actually, hold on. First, one more regular oil thing, and then we'll do population stuff, and then I'll go into significant events like Venezuela. But Guyana, the fifth field is activating next year in the second half. So that will see Guyana come back out here. Production, Guyana, there you are. So Guyana is currently at 900,000 barrels per day. This next upcoming one will see Guyana jump up over 1 million, probably somewhere between 1 and 1.1. So that also is coming in the second half of next year. Specifically, Guyana will reach and exceed 1 million. Let's see. Other population stuff. Oh, yeah. China secretly, covertly, as they, at the start of this year, way back the start of 2025, they accidentally, at first, published that they were down to 1.407 billion, but then immediately rejected that and said, actually, no, we only went down to 1.408 from the 1.410 of the year before. So again with this trade between them and Russia, where Russia now is just spouting random nonsense, and China has become the new USSR, where they tell lies, but they tell really much more believable lies. So they just adjusted the numbers a bit and said, our population did decline, just not by that much. Whereas Russia has constantly said for the last like 4 years now, going on 5, that their fertility rate, their birth rate, stopped decreasing, and actually it has stayed exactly the same for the last 5 years. And also, despite the population declining, people leaving constantly, especially en masse in the early years of the war, and the deaths from the war, Russia has now, this year, they got really ridiculous. And instead of saying that their population decreased by less, and then last year saying that it didn't decrease at all, you remember at the start of this year, I covered in one of the streams where they just decided to YOLO it and said, actually, our population increased again. It's actually going up totally. Uh, just believe it, like Naruto. So China, at the start of this year, was in reality, as they themselves admitted before they redacted it, at 1.407. By the end of this year, as the rate picked up, they're probably down around 1.404 or 403. So sometime during this coming year, during 2026, the subject of this video, whether near the middle or at the very end, they will be in reality crossing the threshold down back below 1.4 billion, although they will not admit to such. So, like instead of 1.403 or 404, when they release their end of year numbers for this year, sometime in the next couple weeks, unless they accidentally release the real ones again, they'll probably say something like 1.405 or 1.406 instead of the actual 404 or 403. But sometime during this coming year, whether very late towards the ends or closer to the middle, because we won't be able to actually know unless they told the truth. They will be crossing below 1.4 billion as things continue, as their decline continues on its way downwards. Okay, were there any other population numbers that were crossing upwards or downwards specific thresholds? Pakistan's population will be crossing over 250 million. Their very vague, uh, ill-performed, ill-performed estimates are still drastically overshooting things, and they've they're like theirs and the UN estimates, which are not really based on high quality work, have already insisted that they're at like 251. They're not, they're closer to like 247 or 248. So next year, though, they will be passing up over 250. And I don't think anyone else was at some kind of significant negative or positive area. As Egypt and Vietnam both already passed 100 million upwards in the upward direction. And Japan is not yet down to 120 million. They're going to cross that line probably in 2028 or 2029. And South Korea is not yet down to 50 million. They're probably going to cross that line in the early to mid 2030s. And Indonesia upward bounds will be reaching 300 million probably in 2030 itself. And India already crossed up over 1.4 billion. So, and what? Whoa, 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 whoa. What are you doing? You interpreted me clicking things I did not click. And Russia, their real population at the moment is probably around maybe a bit under 142. At the rate of declines, the real ones, I mean, ones they were being perfectly honest about before starting the war in 2022. So using those as a rough baseline, at least, since that's all we have to work with now, plus the outflows and the war-related deaths, and the decline in births, the actual birth numbers, which they still do publish, oddly enough, despite classifying all the other demographic data, they will reach and go below 140 probably in 2028, unless something drastically happens before then and like another 2 million people suddenly outrush or whatever. Okay, I'll check chat in a second. Now, before going back into just numbers, now we'll do things themselves that are going to be happening, both the guaranteed and the majorly likely. Okay. I do not know about video games. The only thing I even play at the moment is PoE 2. Per Permian is peaking out, yes. All of shale is. It's not it's not rolling over into like a nosedive, the steepness of which it climbed yet. That's gonna take another little bit. But we did get means to extend its life at the cost of instead of having it do this, we've got it set up and are having it more do a much sharper down like that. I did a video. Look at the video I specifically did, I think like a year ago, about US reaching peak oil production and why we're threading the shale a lot thinner and preparing it for a sharper drop than it otherwise would have, because of the hyper stacking of wells and boreholes. You do this and look at the ridiculousness of the maps that you'll see, and then turn it to another plane and look at it, because things are in 3 dimensions, and then look at it and you see it from 3 dimensions and you see all the borehole dots, and everything is so stacked and close together because you just have to keep punching to make it keep flowing at the current rate. But once you get everything that close and jammed together, the outward suction rates of the individual boreholes start to interfere with each other. So you have one here, and as the rock around it fractures, the stuff starts flowing towards it at rate X. And as long as the nearest borehole is beyond distance Y, those two do not interfere with each other because this is as far as the fracking could have gone from each one. However, as is the case now, when you have boreholes like this, when they're this close together, then you get the stuff from, say, these sides flowing towards them at the normal rate. However, only the closer stuff on the in between is going to go towards them, and the stuff in the middle now kind of stays there because it's feeling negative pressure because in each half of the middle there it's still feeling pull from the other side as well. All right. So, major geopolitical events. The obvious one is Venezuela. This is happening in 2026, obviously, as it's been built up and could have happened before the end of this year if we felt like jumping it that fast. But now, obviously, it's happening next year. Uh, and I mean, and just is happening, period. There is no good ending for this not happening. So everything's already there, or almost everything. We have 10 destroyers, 2 missile cruisers, 1 super carrier with 80 F-18s and F-35s, 1 smaller regular carrier with 30 carrier jets and Viper attack helicopters, a few thousand Marines if we want to do actual onshore stuff. And we've also flown in a bunch of air defense systems to the Caribbean islands nearest to Venezuela. And now, oops, no, that is not what I meant to go up here. And now we're up to 40 F 35s stationed out in Puerto Rico, along with an uncounted number of Reaper drones. And just last week, several in air refueling aircraft were also flown in to enable them to do longer range missions deeper into Venezuela, for example. And just last night, we apparently did a onshore strike for the first time, striking a port around here. Just the one, as again, the Pentagon is still trying to at least get the angle of provoking Venezuela to take some kind of action against some of the U.S. forces in the area first, before then using that to jump off of and initiate the entire overthrow. But if Maduro keeps just sitting there and taking it, and the patience runs out, then we will just do it. The 2 month announcement about the blockade, of which already 3 tankers have been stopped and seized, trying to leave Venezuela. So the blockade is real, and the specific uh, declaration at the start of last week that we will enforce it for exactly 2 months kind of sounds like a thinly veiled statement that 2 months is the limit of the patience that the Pentagon will wait for Maduro to potentially take the first actual uh, real action that they can then use as a jump off cause to act from. But if he waits more, if he just keeps taking it, no matter how hard the hits come, for or the provocative hits rather, before the actual like instead of storm of swords, storm of cruise missiles comes. If he just keeps waiting, then that was probably a thinly veiled statement indicating that 2 months is the patience limit before the brass will then decide to forego that avenue and uh, Shia LaBeouf the whole thing. Just do it. So that is something that is happening next year, probably within the first half of the year, obviously, because that's how math and 2 months work. If that 2 months statement is to be interpreted as such, but the aim is to just get Venezuela out of the way, done and over with before Taiwan happens, so that Pentagon is not worrying about too much at once. Now, regarding Taiwan, will it happen next year? Maybe. We're at the point now, 2026 will be probably nearing a 70% likelihood threshold. Again, unless Xi Jinping, when he said that they're going to go for 2027, if he actually was just publicly laying it out there and that wasn't a throw off date, because usually it would be dumb to do something when you telegraphed that you were going to do something. Again, not that you can really do a surprise invasion, anyways, because that again it takes weeks and months of buildup and is pretty obvious. But unless he actually does intend to stick with 2027, which was the public year, which would be a bit unwise, but hey, maybe whatever. So we're up to a 70% chance now regarding this coming year, 2026. And most likely time frame would be fall, because that's when the waters are the calmest in the straits, and the journey across would only be about 6 or 7 hours instead of 10 plus hours at most other times of the year. But it would be pretty obvious a couple months at least ahead of time. I think even when we did the 2003 invasion of Iraq, uh, we have way beyond the U.S. has way beyond the logistical mass force global movement capability that anybody else does, and even we took about 3 weeks before we had everything where we wanted it. So, in the best case scenario, you get 3 weeks. You can do everything in 3 weeks and maybe still call that a surprise, draw quotation marks, surprise invasion. But in most cases, it's going to be more like 2 months. So you'd see the movement and assembly of stuff, forces and equipment and vehicles along the Fujian coast. And some of those may already be there because they have, on a few years, done practice force assemblies, and not the same amount of military vehicles and equipment was seen leaving as seen being brought in. So probably the PLA has a few like underground parking garages that uh, they've commandeered and are leaving a lot of vehicles stored in so that they don't have to move as much during the actual event. And just a couple days ago, actually, they started bringing, they did start moving. And if they're doing it this year, this would be a long term pre preparation. Because if they intend to do it not in fall, that would be really stupid. Because again, that's the waters in the Taiwan Strait are much rougher most other times of the year. But they did start moving some poorly disguised ballistic missiles out of their larger protected storage bases in the Gobi Desert and the Taklamakan, and they started moving them out into actual China. And so they may be doing some small piecemeal stuff ahead of time. But if we get to again, if we get to August or September, if we get to the end of summer this year or next year, just like I said at the start of this year regarding this year, if you get to August or maybe September, if you want to be generous, and nothing like this has been seen, then they're not doing it. Uh, they, if they're not doing it, or even if they are doing it this coming year, they will at the very least do probably, since that would mean they're picking 2027, a very large practice go at it. Like probably another practice of mass force assembly on the coast and another week of thousands combat jet flybys per day of the island, along with fleet surrounding stuff. They are actively doing fleet surround practice of the island right now. Like right this instant, it's lasting a few days, and for the first time in some of their drills, they've actually assembled empty multiple launch rocket systems with long enough range to reach the island, and they're doing simulations of launching long range rocket volleys. So they are doing a medium practice right now, but if and even if they don't, or even if they do intend to actually go through with it this year or this coming year, they will still probably do one more big mega practice beforehand, both for the sake of practice and for the sake of lulling and psyching Taiwan and the rest of us out into thinking, at least Beijing would hope that we think that all they're going to do is keep practicing and that we'll be a bit too lulled when they actually start doing stuff to be legitimately ready for it. But that is something that is not guaranteed to happen this year, but is now in the upper half in terms of likelihood. Let's see. Iran 2.0 is another major geopolitical event that is going to happen this year. The US and Israel already just discussed and even announced publicly that we're going to go through with another strike wave on Iran. Time frame was not specified, but sometime during 2026 is obviously, kind of on the 99% likelihood stage. As the the general idea, again, in the end, the end goal is to oust the regime, both to remove a medium tier threat and also to allow the entry of outside oil and gas industries to revitalize Iran's oil and gas production into its actual capabilities, as Iran probably could, as Qatar intends to, get up to like 40 billion cubic feet per day eventually of gas production. And actually, uh, if some of their offshore stuff was better developed, could probably get back up 2 or over 4, despite how degraded their fields are, if they again add externalized help and better tech and equipment to work with. They probably could actually get back up over 4 million barrels per day. Not for very long, though. At best, it would still last until like maybe 2035 before they would still start creeping down from that. Their gas output, like Qatar's, would last for decades and decades, however. And the also probably aiming to take advantage of the fact that there are protests, new protests and riots are ongoing right this moment in Iran against the regime, primarily because of the water shortages, which I just finished recording a video for, and I'm going to try to edit together before the end of the year tomorrow night. But the water shortages, the massive ones that are going to hit Iran in a couple of years, but they've actually already started. Uh, Several cities throughout the country now already have entered into instead of rolling blackouts where you rotate which section of a population has electricity and then which section has it for the next 2 hours after that to ration things out. Several of Iran's major cities have already entered the equivalent of that, but for water, rolling water access blackouts because the water situation has become so severe. So it's a mix of the water situation and the fact that on top of 50 plus, or I think it was 50 plus percent inflation last year, Iran over the course of this year has gone through over another 40% of inflation, and the wages are not being increased to match it. So they have seen the price of everything over just these last 2 years, not even counting the couple of years of turmoil before those, but just the last 2 years, 2024 and this year, 2025, over that time, they've seen the price of literally everything double, and their incomes are not being adjusted. So the people are pretty angry at Tehran right now, and as that situation. Oh, and on top of because this is already happening again. Remember, they redirect a lot of their natural gas to reinject into the oil fields to keep the oil outflowing, so that they can export that to earn money. We'll draw a dollar sign here coming inbound because the oil makes a lot more money than the natural gas does, and they don't even export a lot of natural gas anyways because their own demands is kind of exceeding their current production, and they have to re-inject a lot of the natural gas into the oil fields to repressurize them and keep the oil outflowing because they can't re-inject water because they don't have any water to spare, and they don't have the water pull capacity from the Persian Gulf, at least not built out yet. I don't even know if they're working on that. But that leaves a lot less natural gas for electricity generation and heating in the winter, which has killed people both the winter before last winter and last winter, and is about to kill people this winter, absence of heating, and has killed people in the summer due to absence of AC because of power outages and blackouts. So all these things are stacking together on the population and has the population rather discontented with the government. And so US and Israel are hoping to take advantage of that and use that momentum already, along with potentially a pattern of occasionally every few months, I guess, doing mass airstrikes on Iran and further crippling its military capabilities, which will thus also reduce its ability to suppress its own population. And so, if the people get mad enough, eventually, after enough of these waves, Iran won't have the means left to actually put down the protests and the riots. Now, the Iranian people do not like the US and Israel at the present moment. They're not like cheering for the strikes, despite what some channels might tell you. But they are upset also with their government because of them immediately spending wads of cash to try to, like, as quick as possible, begin. This is the best radiation symbol I can draw. Uh, Begin restoring the nuclear program. So they're not happy about that either, because that money could have been used to try to address some of the aforementioned issues. So the net result in terms of the regime's favorability as a result of the airstrikes, uh, it is working out negatively for the regime internally. It's not making the population like Israel or like the US, but that's not really the goal. Uh, is as long as it again continues, as long as the effects of it and the decisions it causes the Iranian government to make continue to cause the population to turn more negatively against the government, then that is from Israel and the US's perspective, that's a net win, because we're not doing an invasion. Nor are we doing an invasion of Venezuela either on the other side of the world. It's become pretty obvious in both cases that under the right constraints and pressure points, uh, each regime will, or actually, no, sorry, they'd probably flee to Russia. Each regime will be internally removed, but some indiscernible amount or specific degrees of pressure and tension have to be applied. So that is also something that is coming something that is coming next year in 2026. And I'll just throw this in as random coverage, not something that's specifically coming next year, but there is brewing conflict between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. As you guys probably know, Yemen is kind of split in two, and they're both backing different sides. And that's now actually starting to bring them to blows with each other. And the Saudi Air Force actually just airstruck two UAE cargo vessels, not frigates or warships or anything, but UAE cargo vessels that were bringing weapon shipments in to, or sorry, I believe it was over here. Were bringing weapon shipments in to Yemen, but those were UAE ships, and the Saudi Air Force actually just bombed those last night or the day before, I think. So doubtful of an actual like ground war between these two, but they're not going to be staying around on the friendship boat. And if you guys remember the various videos I made about OPEC gradually disintegrating, uh, this might, this might further the cracks in the alliance, as again, the UAE has been one of the members who's just disregarded the rules or the orders, which are primarily coming from Saudi Arabia, anyways. So because they always wanted to produce more than they were supposed to, or than they were more than they were permitted to by Saudi Arabia, the UAE has been flagrant with the rules and is one of the two primary ones remaining who I've said a few times is probably going to leave OPEC within a few years. The other being Iraq, depending on the way things go. But this might further push the UAE along the path of leaving OPEC, because again, OPEC primarily is the Saudi Arabia and subordinates group. And even though the UAE is not actually listening to the instructions, they they still probably will want to just leave anyways and not be in a group, associate, not sit at the same lunch table in high school with Saudi Arabia. Now that they're having their little sort of proxy war spat with each other over backing different halves of the Yemen split. Okay, let's see. Did I have anything else of major significance that's suddenly going to happen next year? Uh, I don't know if it will jump. Okay, this falls into the maybe category. Maybe next year depends on how they want to play it, but might see some more or heavier stuff spring up between Pakistan and Afghanistan, as the Taliban has been constantly, every few weeks, ordering its border troops to uh, fire rockets at and shoot up the Pakistani border outposts, which has resulted in Pakistan bombing Afghanistan a couple times now. And their motives are not really clear, but I've told you guys before, I subscribe to that hypothesis of someone who there was some group of like psychiatrists or whatever who did a deeper like psychoanalysis of the Taliban based on behaviors and interviews with them. And it seems because they've been around for like 2+ generations now, and the it's not like dudes who were in it in the 1980s who are still there, but it's 2 generations now of their mindset and culture reinforced within themselves. So I'm getting the impression, along with those psychiatrists, I think they're right, that the Taliban just doesn't really, they mentally cannot take weightlessness. Like they don't spiritually know how to live outside of endless war. Like they've spent 2 generations in perpetual jihad against somebody, whether it was against the Soviets in the 80s, against the Afghan government itself in the 90s, and then against the US for 20 years. They just don't know how their souls are supposed to work outside of jihad. So honestly, it it's they might be trying to provoke Pakistan into war so that they have a jihad, so that they have a war to fight. And the only other thing they can do otherwise is continue massacring Balok people down in the Balochistan part of Afghanistan, as the various portions of Balochistan in Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan have made it pretty clear to all 3 countries that they want out. And now they've started violent uprisings. So the only other thing the Taliban has to do that comes close to a perpetual jihad would be just continuing with Balochi massacres. So honestly, they might be trying to get Pakistan to like invade them or go to war with them because that's like the only frame of reference for life that they have. So something is likely to happen. Excuse me, I picked marker, not highlighter. So something between them is likely going to happen this coming year, 2026 again. Just I can't readily like predict for you the scale of it. Whether it's just going to be a couple more episodes every few months of flashes along the border and then bombing campaigns, or whether Pakistan's going to like actually enter Afghanistan with like massive armored columns or something. I have no idea what their general intention is between either of them. But I really do subscribe to that theory that the Taliban just cannot spiritually exist outside of some kind of eternal war. Let's see. Okay, sorry for ignoring chat. Uh, Purging is generals. We don't. Yeah, the issue is we don't know. We don't know if he's been purging them for lack of quality, like he's been doing a low, like a purge of everybody with low IQ, or if he's been purging everyone who's like not deathly loyal to him, whether it's like a Stalin type purge, or whether it's a competency purge. The issue is that again, like the Soviet Union, and unlike modern Russia, China is actually pretty good at keeping things secret and keeping their mouth shut a lot of the time. So we don't really know what the angle of it was. So if you want to throw them benefit of the doubt, then assume it was a purge of low competency generals, uh, and a sign that, along with all the other signs, that it's right on the threshold now that they are actually going to do it, regardless of whether it's this year or sorry, whether it's 2026 or 2027. You guys both synced up. Uh, UAE versus Saudi Arabia. That would depend. If you mean like an actual war between the two of them, me speaking on behalf of the U.S., would not allow that to occur because that has way too much disruption risk to global oil numbers and access. And also, we have forces in both of those countries as well, and don't want those coming under any kind of risk of fire. But Saudi Arabia and the UAE are both most likely intelligent enough to know that pretty obviously. So I would assume they're just going to keep proxy fighting for the most part over Yemen, as their the Houthi portion. It's not exactly like split in half. It's more like this or something. As there have been different rumblings in the past about Yemen splitting in two, and like the Houthi specific portion breaking away as like an independent state. But then there would be immediate war here because they would want a coastline, and then Saudi Arabia would have to deal with that. Uh, on top of having to deal with the fact that the Houthis hate them already because Saudi Arabia has been bombing hospitals in Yemen for like the past decade. But Saudi Arabia also had randomly said a few years ago that they want to annex this part of Yemen. So even Saudi Arabia wants to try some imperial territorial expansion, I guess. They want like their own bit of direct Indian Ocean bit here, and they made an offer to Yemen to buy it. I don't remember the specific amount, so don't quote me on this, but they did actually offer the Yemen government, the one that they ascribe to, not the Houthi one, obviously. They did offer the Yemeni government. They were like, "Hey, we'll give you like a trillion bajillion dollars if you give us the easternmost third of the country. And the Yemenis turned the offer down, obviously, because we're outside of the era where people do that anymore. Uh, some nations, like Russia, apparently still think that we're in that kind of era. And I guess now Saudi Arabia thinks that we're in that kind of era as well. The you can just grab countries or whatever era. You can just annex stuff, and or because this also happened back then, obviously, you can just buy countries if you want, or at least parts of countries. Like I think during throughout the I don't know if it was the Middle Ages or whatever. I'm pretty sure it was Luxembourg, a small Luxembourg here. Like quite a number of times, like people bought and sold Luxembourg. Uh, but in terms of proxy fighting each other, that could go either way because as pissed as Saudi Arabia is going to be to hear this, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are kind of actually of rather equal military strength. Saudi Arabia has more numbers on paper in terms of ground troops. However, they've demonstrated a habit of fleeing from combat. Whereas the UAE troops, the few times they've been in hostile combat areas, actually kind of stuck around and fought. Now there were times where Saudis did too, but those were primarily during the first Gulf War, liberating Kuwait after Iraq had invaded, and that was while they were part of our mega like 700 tank blitzkrieg thrust. So they weren't really in danger. But all their power is basically, in both cases, it's just in their air forces, and they're not really that far apart. The like Saudi Arabia has does have more combat jets, but there's an issue with the number of pilots they have. In that, remember, the Saudi royal family is large. It's not like 12 people, it's hundreds. And more than a few of the lesser princes off to the side, the ones who don't have direct access to the money and thus can't own an entire A380 for themselves, that they pose with swimsuit swimsuit stripper models in front of, while simultaneously demanding that the rest of the Saudi population live according to Islamic laws. Uh, all that aside, the lesser princes do have a weird habit outside of driving Formula One cars. They do have a weird habit of kind of wiggling their way into the Air Force and flying, being listed down as F-15 pilots to look cool. So, not all of Saudi Arabia's pilots are actually legitimately combat pilots. Let's see, blah blah blah. Uh, Not even remotely. What are you like? What are you talking about? There is Venezuela does not have any form of reach capability, and even if it actually had like long range cruise missiles, uh, like the supposed ones that everyone keeps saying Russia delivered that are uninterceptable or whatever BS, they would be stopped by the AD screen on both the islands that we've set up and the ships out at sea, and the AD screen by all the anti air systems on Puerto Rico itself. and by combat jets and drones in the air that can launch anti missile to missile munitions. But Venezuela just doesn't really have an existing military to begin with. They have like a frigate from 1962 or something. Uh, they have they have a few Su-27s, I think, or maybe Su-30s that are not really maintained because remember you hear like the U.S. military budget is 800 billion. France's military budget is like 90 billion. Uh, Brazil's military budget is like 20 billion. Uh, and you see the downscaling of power along those budget lines. Venezuela's military budget is not even 1 billion. It's 700 million, million with an M. So there's a reason the the few times that they've flown jets out into the Caribbean and then quickly hurried back to try to act as an intimidation tactic. There's a reason it was the same exact two F-16s every single time they came out. Is because the like 60 total between Su-27s and F-16s that they have on paper, out of that 60, probably like 10 of them can actually fly. But they don't also have any arsenal of like cruise missiles, and their ground forces, like the most dangerous thing they have that might endanger low flying aircraft if we used things that are actually detectable by radar, i.e., if we, for some reason, did not send the F 35s and sent like F 18s or F 16s instead, then the only real danger Venezuela has is it does have a lot of old shoulder anti air rocket launchers, old Mistrals from the Soviet Union from way back in the Cold War. And if you get enough guys lined together and they all fire off a Mistral shot at a passing detectable jet, say like an F-16 or something, if you get a bunch of dudes within the same rough vicinity and they all fire a shot, and you get the F-16 to have to expend all of its anti-missile flares, then they might get a hit in. But other than that, they don't really have anything, and their ground forces are running with like ancient T-60 somethings and old M60 patents, and most of those don't actually work either. And they're primarily the Venezuelan military has primarily degraded into a a black bagging force, as in they show up in camo and black bag people and make them disappear when they've been saying too many things that Maduro doesn't want them to say. Uh, I am not. I'm not sure in what manner you mean that. Does the fact about fracking apply to super hot rock? Uh, in what regard? That's kind of vague. Are you referring to getting getting oil out of super hot rock? It wouldn't still be oil if it was in super hot rock. If you mean extracting geothermal heat, then not really. I mean, you wouldn't need to drill to extract geothermal heat. You wouldn't need to drill 50 billion wells. You're only drilling 50 billion wells because shale well output drops so precipitously that you need to keep drilling another 50 billion wells every second to keep the output going. For geothermal heat, you only need a few. You need to actually be willing to pay for and drill them first, which up until recently, we as a civilization have not really been willing to do, but thankfully now we are. But Yeah, because you're pulling heat. You're not trying to pull a physical substance. You're not using suction. You're not vacuum sucking the heat itself. Heat is energy transfer. It's not a physical. It's not a physical like material that needs to like have a pressure gradient to flow along. It has a heat gradient, but it's not. It doesn't have a pressure gradient or a suction gradient that one can like interfere with another in that sense. Uh the but between that split, I don't really know in terms of the Houthis versus the rest of Yemen, whether whatever happens between the two potential factions in the rest of Yemen, the Houthis are the only angle I know is the Houthis are too much for the other parts to really overcome, at least as of the time being. They're supposedly the rest of Yemen was prepping way back in the summer of this year to like launch some kind of massive offensive, but they never did. And it wouldn't really have gotten that far. So yeah, there is potentially a chance Yemen could split three ways, but like firmly, solidly the most likely angle, not regarding next year specifically, but just in general. The only one that's like a really solid one is the Houthi split from Yemen, and that's if they want to really go for the actual separation angle. But even then, there'll probably end up being a war between them and regular Yemen because they'll want some kind of coastline. But I'll also watch and wait and see if Saudi Arabia like ups the offer to buy the eastern 20% of Yemen again. Maybe this time they'll offer $2 trillion instead of just one. They already have bought things off of people before, like Egypt. I don't know if it's all of these ones. I know they got these ones, but I think they bought some of these as well. They started buying islands off of Egypt, the Egyptian islands in the Red Sea. I think it was a kind of sizable payment, but really not that high on my like threshold of where you should be willing to actually literally sell pieces of your nation. I think they paid them like 100 billion. And I mean, I get Cairo's angle. They're not that rich, and they're just a few islands. Not nobody really lives there, except for like beach resort workers. But still, come on, guys, don't succumb to this. Don't let this actually go on. Please don't go down this road. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if next they want to try to buy all the Eritrean islands in the Red Sea there to put some of their own stuff there, or just as a means to evict Israel. As these islands are where Israel has one of its overseas bases, as they have two or three, and that's where is the IDF strikes the Houthis in Yemen from is from the air bases that they have on those Eritrean islands. The islands are Eritrean. Israel pays them a like monthly lease or a yearly lease because that's cheaper, and obviously they don't want to just outright buy the islands because requires a lot of money being dumped at once, even though Eritrea would probably sell them for even less than Egypt sold its islands. But I would not be surprised if in like the future, not obviously not talking about 2026 specifically, if in the future, Saudi Arabia tried like buying those as well. I may be mistaken. I think they've in the past, although they framed it as like a joke, uh, and it wouldn't surprise me with the attitude my dad saw that they had towards Bahrain and Bahrainis when he was in Bahrain and Qatar and Saudi way back in the 2000s. It would not surprise me if they went for that angle again, but I believe they have in the past tried to buy Bahrain from Bahrain. It's like Bahrain, for anyone who's confused, Bahrain, this island is its own country. It's not like part of Qatar or part of Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia has tried to buy Bahrain from Bahrain, which is, kind of circular. Not that's not even circular. That's like one dimensional at that point. Okay, so uh, back into lesser stuff to close it out before I go make some dinner. So, regular numbers and things. We have the only ones we did not do were the birth rates or fertility rate updates. So, major thresholds we have sometime during the course of this coming year, we have Ecuador, Peru, and Panama are all going to be going below 1.5 children per woman. Do we have any others in this area? Let me fix the tear in the page here. Costa Rica potentially might drop under one. We'll have to see. But it looks like they might be starting to level out with a few exceptions like Cuba and Chile. The Latin American countries seem to be around the same vein as European countries, where it looks like their floor, where they will bottom out at, is more around 1 or 1.1 instead of down at like point 0 or sorry, point 0.7 or 0.8, like the East Asian countries will go down to. As a number of European countries have already reached an apparent bottom and are now level out, staying flat. For example, Spain and Italy are both around 1.1, and that seems to be where they're staying. Some others are actually staying higher, such as Netherlands and Portugal. They seem to be pretty steady around 1.4, as well as Bulgaria and Romania around 1.4. Everybody else is gradually making their way downwards. Germany's down to like 1.25 or something. The UK is down under 1.4 now. Dropping below replacement levels in their actual fertility rates, not the ones that you're going to see on the Wikipedia page, because again, that constantly just pulls the UN's generic estimates data. It's not pulling from hard data. Libya in 2026 will be passing below the 2.1 threshold, along with Egypt and Jordan. Those three will be passing below the replacement threshold. Most of the Persian Gulf nations, because they're rich, are already below it, and Iran because it's falling apart. Iran is down at 1.4. Saudi Arabia is at 1.8, I think. Kuwait's at like 1.5. Qatar's at like 1.4. And the UAE is all the way down close to 1.1. But Libya, Egypt, and Jordan will be hitting 2.1. Algeria will be hitting 2.5 and continuing downwards. And waiting to see. UAE seems to potentially be the indicator. It looks like Middle Eastern and Islamic countries for their low floor threshold where they stop. It looks like it will be similar to Europe in being more around 1.1. The going all the way down to 0.7 or 0.8 seems to, for the moment, be very specifically tied to East Asian countries, China, Taiwan, Korea, Vietnam, etc. Or sorry, not Vietnam yet. Thailand, etc. Singapore. That seems to be an East Asian thing, at least for the time being. It seems like almost everyone else, for almost everyone else, it seems the floor is closer to 1 or 1.1. Let's see, others. Kazakhstan is on its way downwards and will be at 2.5 in 2026, or will reach it sometime during 2026, along with Iraq, will be continuing downwards and hitting 2.5. And let's see, who else do we have and where? Uh, Next year, 2026, is the year that Pakistan likely hits, maybe goes below, but probably will hit exactly a birth rate or fertility rate of 3, which is, again, lower than the Wikipedia listing. But again, as said before, they're not pulling from like hard data. They're pulling from the regular estimates that just get annually or even quarterly published, and those are pulling from, you guessed it, algorithms, which are based on prior data, usually from 5 or 10 years ago. We got 2 over here that will be hitting these specific numbers, and again, I'm just bringing up countries that will be hitting or going below or above specific numbers, not ones that will be getting close to, but not actually touching them. Nigeria will be falling below 4. Their actual fertility rate is just above it, or was just above it at the start of this year, around 4.2 or 4.22. And based on the look of things, at the end of this year, has reached around 4.1. So next year, throughout 2026, it will most likely decline down to or below 4. And same with Tanzania. They will most likely reach around 4. And some, okay, I will mention a few close ones. Namibia actually will probably go below 2.5 this coming year. South Africa is right at it, so will probably drop below replacement. Technically, it would be the 3rd time they've done so. And Kenya will get close. They'll probably get down to like 2.6 or 2.7, but not hitting 2.5 just yet. And Somalia, now that Somalia has become way more stable and we were able to get actual data out of them, including the new governments going through and like interviewing people and asking, how many, including children who died, how many children, did you have over this last time span while the country was chaotic and had no data to work with? And working all of that out from different people who started having children at different times as we got closer and closer to current day into the 2020s, Somalia's birth rate actually has been falling. It wasn't literally sitting at 7 children per woman for the last 30 years. It plunged during the Civil War, went back up, was going down slowly, and over the last 7 or 8 years has started going down more quickly. And this year, or this coming year, 2026, it will either hit or drop below 5 children per woman. Meanwhile, the two remaining highest ones, Mali and Niger, will still be close to 6 and will be on their way down. They and the DR Congo, the big unstable Congo, both passed below 6 this year, and they're all at like 5.8 or 5.9 or something. Right, and that's the end of the numbers I had written down, at least. So that should be the end of everything, and I really want to go get dinner anyways. This dragged on way too long, and chat died anyways. Okay, so that's probably going to be it then, unless anything else, comments or super chats or whatever have you goes up in the next 30 seconds to allow for the stream delay, then I will be signing off. If you missed any parts of it, obviously you can go back through the video recording to any point you want. This is another reason why I don't do long streams, because it kills my throat to do so. All right, 15. I'll wait 15 more seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. That is it then, and I will